Welcome to season 4 of the All About Us podcast show. I'm happy. I'm happy to be back. We have a whole new set, whole new lights, whole new cameras. And today on the All About Us podcast show, where we deep dive into stories of remarkable individuals who are making a real difference in their communities, I'm hosting someone today who I'm very privileged to be sitting down with. It's truly special because she's from my neck of the woods. Our guest is Khadijah Butler, author of Laying the Foundation Brick by Brick, second edition, and the founder of the CDB Scholarship Foundation. By day, she makes an impact in the health sector at a leading pharmaceutical company, but her real passion lies in creating educational opportunities for African American students and advocating for those affected by gun violence, all in honor of her late father, Craig. Welcome to the show, Khadijah. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks, Carl, for having me.
Khadijah, describe yourself as an around the way girl with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. What does that mean? Tell my audience what that means.
For me, I think being from Philly, it's like you have that grounded, humbling beginnings. And I think the big thing, especially now at the age that I'm at, I continue to be who I am, despite where I live, despite which offices I go to. But I think the center of who I am, as well as just the core values that I have, is just not only retaining knowledge, but giving knowledge to those that are in my community, sharing what I know, not being the gatekeeper. And I just will not forget about my Philly roots.
Okay, great, great, great. Now, let's go into some details concerning a tragedy that occurred in your family and how that has affected your journey and how you really transformed pain into power.
Man, it's tough, and I'm glad that you phrased it that way because I feel like sometimes when I get interviewed about it, it's the delivery of how it comes out, and it can sometimes be triggering. But I think, it was again over 26 years ago. My father backed his car into a one of those disposable basketball poles, and it was a child, a 14-year-old child who was also a drug dealer. They have an argument. He goes into one of the crack houses, shoots my dad. My dad tried to drive himself to the emergency room, but there were two holes. And so he bled out. And, we didn't find out about it immediately. So when it came down to running the nonprofit, that was something that just came about 6 years ago. Like I just was not mentally in the space. But initially, I was like, I'm crazy for running this nonprofit. But I think seeing the impact that it has on the community and students really lets me know that my father is somewhere smiling.
Well, I can understand that. It seems like you took that pain and directed that to educational equality. And how does that tie into building a legacy to honor your father?
It's interesting. When I first started out, I think the impetus was yes, he was murdered and he was taken away from us. But the real fact remains is there are other races outside of African Americans that graduate at a higher rate, especially in Philadelphia. And for me, it was really just about narrowing that gap. But also really just highlighting African American students that excel and want more. And my father was always really big on education and integrity and giving back. And so, being able to couple those things, but also serving my community is really, it's an unexplained fulfillment that continues to make me proud.
Okay, well, Khadijah, let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us about your upbringing and what it was like being an around the way girl in Philly? I know what that's like, but people will understand the Philly vibe, Market Street, South
Yes.
Street.
Yes. Yes. Man, Market Street, South Street. So I grew up in Southwest Philadelphia. I kind of talk about it in my book. Two parent household. Parents were married. But I would say for I have a sister and a brother, and I feel like my dad was like super tough on my sister and I, like just to kind of make sure that we didn't get swooned away from what could be bad in Philly. But he was all about morals and values and honoring your parents and honoring your community. And it also gave you that sense of home. It gave you that sense of knowing yourself and your own belonging. And so it really, I don't know, I think about it's what continues to humble me and ground me to this day. Just keeping sight of how I was raised by my father and my parents, but also just remembering the importance of what having a great upbringing can do for you as you get older.
Okay, okay, great. Where actually in Southwest Philly? Give us like the neighborhood, the
Man,
neighborhood.
this 55th in Baltimore. Like I would tell people, listen, let me
Baltimore Ave.
yes, Baltimore Avenue where the old KFCs. See,
See
I
the
know you
old
know.
KFC in the park, not that far
Yes.
from there.
Yes. Yes. And at that time they used to have like those horse rides, so my dad would like take
Right,
us on those. So yes, it's like, how do you have a horse ride in the hood? But we didn't think of it that way. So I mean,
right.
it was amazing.
Well, Philadelphia is like that. I mean, you have Brick City, but then you have all the park areas.
Hmm.
So you do get to get that, that natural vibe and get to unwind at various different times. But it's kind of strange because there's no transition. You move from one right into the other.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
let's talk about who Craig was, your father, and what
Mhm.
kind of influence did he have on the person you became today?
Man, I think my dad was definitely he was my hero. He was my inspiration, my muse. And I think it really just had to do with who he was at the core. I think because he was so honest, he was so transparent. I felt like there were jewels, which I talk about in my book all the time, like that he would pass down to me. And it's to this day, I still remember a lot of things that he taught me, or, especially taught me about being a woman. And as you're getting older, like at some point when you get married, little things like that that really shaped who I was. But I think also just remembering and valuing who I am as a woman. But I think the other thing was he had that family connected side. Like my dad was very much a life of the party, very much a laugh out loud, explosive kind of energy, but he still had the I love you, family is everything. And so I try to carry on those same traits as well. I'm not as loud outside of my voice carrying, but he is definitely a man that is missed.
Okay. In those early days after his passing, well, no, let me digress. Can you take us back to the moment when you lost your father due to gun violence and what that experience was like for you and your
I
family?
mean, I will say I think the first day, it was complete shock. It was complete
Okay.
shock. I remember this is how much I'm dating myself. I'm like coming home. I had a pager. I'm wondering like why is my sister paging me like a million times? And like when she told me she's crying, I get into the house and she's crying, saying like, dad died. I couldn't fathom it. Like to the point that I still went to work the same day. And like people are calling the job, like, oh my God, I heard, but I just could not process it. Like I really couldn't. And it took until the actual funeral that Friday for me to like this is real. Like to the point where that's the only time I cried. And it really, it took a while, like, for me to get out of that state of shock, and I think that's another reason why it took so long as well for me to even think about kinda doing something in his honor, but yeah, I it was a blur for sure.
Okay. Okay. In those early days after his passing, how did you shape your grief? And when did you first realize you wanted to channel that pain into something meaningful?
I didn't to be honest, I didn't channel my grief the way I should have. I didn't realize until later because I just was not willing to deal with it. I didn't realize until like some years later that I really wanted to do something in his honor at that time, because it was like 3 months later, they did wind up catching the child. And so now those wounds are still opened up. So now you're in court. Now you have newspapers interviewing you. Like, so you're going through all of that trauma as well. And then another year of just the sentencing. So those first like couple of years were, I don't think I dealt with it at all. Now, my sister, on the other hand, like, they provide you with these different resources, and, you should attend these gun violence victims, like, there's groups for it.
Correct.
I did not do well with it. And I think it just took me longer probably than I should have.
Okay. What does the phrase turning pain into power mean to you personally?
It means taking. And we all go through something, right? Like, it may not be losing a parent. It could be something that's the most painful, the most heartbreaking, something that will really turn your life around. And it's really up to you to make the choice to turn it into something powerful, turn it into something beautiful. It's up to you to do it. And sometimes there are certain moments in your life when you don't think you have the strength, but there were days when that's the only strength that I had. So that's, to me, how I look at that statement.
Okay. Well, now we want to move on. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about your foundation.
Mhm.
I guess this is part of the nonprofit you created. Let's talk
Yes.
about this CDB Scholarship Foundation. What does CDB stand for, and what inspired you to create this nonprofit in your father's honor?
So CDB stands for Craig D. Butler, which is my father's name. And I'm glad you said CDB, because people always say, "Is this CBD?" And they think about the other thing. But
Right.
it's Craig D. Butler. I have to spell it out. It was founded almost 6 years ago. Our first program, our key program, are our two $1,000 annual scholarships that we provide to Pennsylvania and South Jersey students. But we also added some additional initiatives as well, where we do some anti-violence events. So we'll have like the MLK event coming up. And then we also started a winter trunk party. So we provide donation. It's more of a donation drive for college students. But again, what's at the core of it is really sending students that are underserved to college.
Why did you choose to focus specifically on the African American community when designing your scholarship program?
For me, I always feel like we are always left behind. We are always the community that's not thought of. We are always the minute, and I feel like I got a lot of backlash about this even throughout the years, is it feels as if you're biased. But how can you be biased against a culture that's so far below on the totem pole that the minute there's an opportunity for someone or something to create some longevity, it becomes a threat. And for me, going back to my around the way girl roots, the thing that I talk about the most, I don't want Ashley Banks. I want Shaquita that's down the street that has a 4.0, that came from welfare. And I have the opportunity to bring awareness that everything you think about in Philadelphia is not bad. Like, there are actual students like myself that actually want to go to school if their financial circumstances were not, the cause of why they couldn't go.
Okay. Can you walk us through what the scholarship offers and who is eligible to apply?
So the scholarship is a $1,000 scholarship. Who is eligible is African American high school seniors in Pennsylvania as well as South Jersey. So that'd be Camden County. Eligibility is you would have to have a 3.0. You would also need 2 letters of recommendation. You would also need to complete an essay. We need your transcripts. We're kind of moving away from the whole SAT, ACT requirements. Is that something that's moving away as well? And that's pretty much it.
What are some of the biggest challenges you face in running a nonprofit, especially one that's so deeply personal?
Besides, as I mentioned earlier, the biases, it's really interesting when I'm starting to hear these claims that, oh, you say African American, why don't you say in your mission minority? And for me, this goes back to who my father was and who I am. I am not going to go against my own integrity to elevate my culture in order to align with what the industry tells us. I think the other thing is funding is always a big thing, especially now with this whole lack of, I don't even want to say DEI, but like there aren't as many funding opportunities for a nonprofit of my niche ability. And then I would also say, as much as nonprofits are supposed to be about marketing and partnerships and cause marketing partnerships, there isn't as much collaboration as I would like.
Correct. Correct. How many students do, or how many grants do you generally award to students?
So scholarships, we award 2 per year.
Okay.
Thus far, for the last going on 6 years, we have awarded 13 scholarships, and I'm hoping we'll get
Wow.
15 by the end of 2026.
Okay. That's amazing.
Thank you.
How do you balance your full-time career in the pharmaceutical industry with the demands of running a scholarship foundation?
Man, it used to be, it didn't feel like it was as bad. So within the last 5 months, I just got a promotion. And so now I have to be in the office a little bit more and the role is a little different. So it has been a little bit of a struggle, but I think it's knowing what my mission is about is really what gives me the battery behind my back. But I think also just hearing, because I'm still in contact with my scholars and also just kind of hearing from the community, that's something that continues to drive me. But I do collapse on weekends so I could try to recharge myself. If that helps a little bit, like that's the only way. Listen, I'm in my bed on Sundays. So
Okay. Can you share a story about one of your scholarship recipients that really touched your heart or showed you the impact of your work?
man, it's one of my scholars. I want to say it was the second year. It was the first guy that applied. And what I typically try to do is present the scholarships in person. And when I presented it in person, I reached out to the school, but the principal came up to me and said his name is Makai. His father was going to be there. His father came to me and said, I just want to sit down and thank you because this meant so much. Like for you to number one, take time out of your day to be here, to meet him, to invest in his education. It really meant a lot because it's, number one, that the thing about having a father there that is so invested in their education, but also lets their child know like this is something that you should be striving to. I feel like it's something that I'll never it's something that I'll never forget knowing that it touched a parent and it again continues to put the battery in your back to keep going.
I don't know if you see this disparity. I do a lot of things overseas in other countries, especially in Africa. And it always seems like, especially when you're dealing with African Americans or Africans, they have a lot of programs and a lot of different things set up for the girls. But the
Mhm.
boys and young men seem to get left out. Do you see that same disparity here in the United States?
I was saying it at the beginning, but I'm
Okay.
wondering if it just has to do with awareness, right? Like I feel like that's what's so important about like coming on these kind of podcasts to let people know. I'm wondering if it has to do with that. Do their parents know? Like, I don't know. I think that's the reason why, even for that first scholar, it meant so much to me because I'm like, wow, we finally have a guy. So I
Right.
don't know. I'm wondering what that's about.
That's a fair question. What role does community play in the success of the CDB Scholarship Foundation?
You can't really do any of these things if you're not serving the community. I tell people all the time, like, if you're going into it to get rich or to get famous or whatever, like it doesn't work without the community, right? Like there are a lot of days that you're a steward. Like it's about being a servant of the actual community and what's going to make an impact for them. So I couldn't do any of the things that I do without community and partnerships.
Now I want to move into this break by break thing you put together. You've written Laying the Foundation Brick by Brick, and you're now on the second edition. What motivated you to write this book in the first place?
Well, I will say, even in the first sentence in my book, I did not want to become an author. I was not a journalist major. Like this was something that fell into my lap the same way the nonprofit did. I'd had a magazine interview and a publisher came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I think you should write a book." And I'm like, why? Like I'm like, maybe I'll do an ebook again to like bring awareness. But it was so cathartic to me because as I was writing, there were some days when I would laugh and some days when I would cry thinking about my father. And I think because it's a memoir and my love letter to him, but also my gift to the community, is kind of how this whole thing started.
What does laying the foundation brick by brick symbolize to you?
To me, when I think about anything that you start, it has to start with the foundation. A brick, you piling bricks on top of each other is the start of, or even not even piling them on top of each other. If you think about the Wizard of Oz, it was based off of a journey. And so to me, it was a journey of healing because I had to go from mourning to grief. But then there was also, out of everything that happened, that grieving, that longing, all the going into court and all of that, it brought me to this journey of people will now say I am a CDB scholar based off of this long journey that I took to get here.
Can you give us a glimpse into what readers will find inside the pages of your book?
So the one thing they're going to find is that around the way girl, that whole thing is in there because I didn't want to write a book that was going to be boring, like that people would not relate to. I was really clear on I want people to know me, to feel like that they've gained a friend, but to also not just drop the book because it's not a easy thing to run a nonprofit and you want people to understand it so that they are motivated. But I think the thing that, and I heard this from someone on Facebook as well when the book first came out, is I really didn't know it was a woman who said she just lost her brother. And she was like, I really couldn't think of a way to honor my brother. And now I have the tools to do it. So around the way, girl, Philly, you hear all of that, me, but you also gain so many tools and resources as well.
Why did you decide to release a second edition, and what's different about the second edition that's not in the first edition?
So with the second edition, now I am my own publisher. So my own publisher now. So I re-released everything just under the Craig D. Butler Scholarship or CDB Butler Scholarship branch umbrella. There were also a lot of items that I added in there about, I don't speak about it as much, but for those that are doing something other than the C3, I took some things out that weren't as relevant. Like, so at one point there used to be Amazon Smiles, but now there isn't. So there's little tools and tidbits in there that I've added in the second edition that wasn't in the first.
Okay. Who is this book written for, excuse me, and what do you hope readers will take away from it?
I think the book is going to be written for those that want to start a nonprofit. That's one piece of the book. But there's also, if you do actually want to start a scholarship for whatever reason, say I have a friend of mine, her mom died from AIDS. Like if you want to honor and figure out how can I honor my mother, but also, give back to a community that's suffering from that same thing, you have the tools and the resources to do it. And you have a guide to help you along the way. Like it's not as hard.
So this is a book about helping people in our community who want to service their community, teach them how to, put together a nonprofit, how to put together a foundation, and how
Yes.
to start this process. Okay. How has the response been for your community and from readers who've connected with your message?
So I think just from going from this one example about people wanting to know what they could do, like to keep the legacy alive, but also there were people who, especially those in Philly that experienced gun violence, they could relate. So it was something that was relatable. Listening to the language, not being, and I think listening to the language, but there's also a chapter where I talk about my missteps and my mistakes. And, you know, them learning from what not to do has been some of the things that I've gotten from people that they could appreciate.
Okay. Beyond the scholarship in the book, how else are you working to create change in your community?
Oh, I mean, outside of, I think the biggest thing is partnerships. So I have a partnership with 100 Black Men. And I try to make sure that because they do a lot of mentoring within the community, but I'm also part of a scholarship committee for a friend of mine that also runs a nonprofit who teaches golf to African Americans. So I try to make sure that I'm partnering with organizations that have similar missions, but that I'm also doing as much as I can for those around me that are also touching the community.
What does educational equality mean to you, and why is it such a critical issue for minority communities?
Educational equality to me is about changing the paradigm shift. It's about narrowing that gap. It's about saying that if I get as close to where other cultures are when it comes to education, what would the outcome be? Like would I gain the same opportunities, but also the impact that it has when you actually have education or a degree. It's for some the escape from poverty. It's an opportunity for you to also be philanthropic. Like, it has such an impact if it's there, and it's I just want us as a culture just to be able to be on the same playing field.
Can you talk about some of the systemic barriers that African American students face when it comes to accessing higher education?
I think the one thing is about awareness. I used to do scholarship workshops, and there would be counselors or parents that just were not aware of, well, how am I going to pay for it? Then it would be just as far as like lack of access. How are they going to be able to visit some of these schools? How are they going to be able to travel back and forth? Like you're thinking about how realistic is a college life going to be? But also when it comes to affordability, we are one of the cultures that has the highest rate of student loan debt. And they say it's more so African American women. And so those to me are part of the reasons why I started this nonprofit as well, so that people aren't carrying a ton of student loan debt like myself.
Okay. What changes have you seen or you hope to see in your community as a result of your advocacy work?
I think the biggest thing is starting early. So that's another reason why I wrote even the planners. When people say, so just this past weekend, I had a book festival and there was a ninth grader that said, hey, how do I apply for the scholarship? So, one, there's going to be an awareness there that a child that's in the ninth grade is going to start early if his aspirations are to go to college. But then the other thing is if you are someone that just wants to be an advocate for gun violence. Like there's opportunities for you to volunteer and for you to speak to a founder who has gone through it and to say, I can be a part of this cause and I think you can relate with your social justice nonprofit. Just being the person that people see to be inspired by.
What changes have you seen or you hope to see in your community as a result of your advocacy?
The things that I hope to see more college graduates. I really do. I know that there are careers now where you probably don't have to go to school, but I do hope that there's more college graduates. I hope that there's more opportunities for funding for some of these students, and that I also hope that they can get into careers that will help them to soar and not it be that 4 years of wasted time.
And I'm just going to interject here. It kind of seems like for us as African Americans, we always get to the party late. If you understand what I mean by that.
I do.
And my biggest concern now is we're steering a lot of African American students to college without any insight or understanding on what AI is going to do
Mm,
and the amount of jobs which AI are going to erase.
yep.
I tell a lot of students, a lot of times I'm talking to younger people and I tell them, forget computer science.
Yeah.
Or forget finance. I mean, there's just so many of these jobs now that AI, they're just going to take over. It's going to take over. And so, it's important for us to kind of, I believe, have a little foresight. And what I'm telling students now, get involved in STEM. Engineering, um, the hard sciences. What I mean by hard sciences, math, physics, chemistry, AI, anything that you have to use your hands to do. AI isn't going to be able to replace. So for those who don't want to go to college, get into a trades, become an electrician, construction, plumbing, all of that can't get erased by AI. And so I think it's important for us when we're steering on the students to get a degree in something that isn't going to disappear 4 years from now. And if you don't want to get a degree, get a degree. I mean, go to a trade school and pick up a trade that's actually going to be there. And I don't mean to take over your story, but I'm going to give you, for instance,
No, you're good.
when my youngest son got accepted to a magnet school, he had to interview and he got accepted into the electronics program and he got accepted into the electrical trades to become a residential and commercial
Mhm.
electrician. He wanted to go into the electronics. I told him absolutely not. The first day he attended school, ninth grade, I went there and made sure he was going into the right program, excuse me.
Mhm.
First 3 or 4 months, my son was mad. Then, towards the end of his ninth grade year, he came and knocked on my bedroom door and he said, "Dad, I have something I need to tell you." I said, "What do you want to tell me?" He said, "I'm so thankful you made me go into electrical trades." Basically, to make a long story short, that whole electronics program, the factory that they were directing those students to, well, training those students to get jobs for, canceled their contract. So they weren't building the factory here anymore. All of those students who enrolled in that electronics program, ninth graders, now you have to go through a 4-year program with just a general degree. And this school is the type of school where you go to actually come out and actually have a certification, whether it's
Mhm.
barbering, nursing, whatever. You come out of this school with, a head start to your career.
Right.
Now these students are devastated. They're trying to get into the electrical trades program and they couldn't.
See,
So,
dad knows best, see? I
well, it's
mean,
not, but once again, I mean, it's just, I think also once again, we as parents, we need to have some foresight, and it's not always what our children want to do, but our children don't have enough knowledge and insight to understand how the world changes and what can happen, to just totally wipe something out. Moving on, how do you keep hope alive when the work you're doing, excuse me, addresses such painful and persistent problems in our community?
I mean, it's rough. I definitely have my days, but I remember what I'm doing it for. And I remember that if I quit, I know there are so many people that are relying on me, but I also know there are so many people that want me to fail. And that actually pushes me. And it's like, you better get used to seeing this face because I'm going to always disrupt. I know you don't want us to gain on y'all, but that's what I'm going to do. And that is what pushes me, if I'm being totally honest.
Okay, you mentioned the concept of turning pain into power several times. Can you break that down for us? What does that transformation look like in practice?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things, and it took me a really long time, was finding your sense of like healing, but also just it took years of therapy. But some people don't necessarily do the traditional therapy route. Like there's paint therapy, there's therapy and music. It's really about finding and accepting, yes, your loved one is not here, but again, it goes back to choice. So it really like I said before, like I know thinking about my father, he would not want me to be sad. And I feel like it would be the same way with anyone that's going through that as well. And it's about once you get through your grief and your mourning, it's about you taking that power because it's the power that's within you to change it.
What advice would you give someone who's experienced tragedy or loss and wants to create something meaningful from their pain but doesn't know where to start?
I would say the first thing, because I'm very much a praying spiritual woman. I would definitely say pray. You do have to get to a place past mourning because this kind of work requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of patience. And it's like once you're out there and you're serving the community, it's really not a turning back unless you quit. So I would say just try to make sure that, you're surrounded by community, meaning your family, friends, and you mentally have the strength to take this on. But it's about getting yourself right mentally first and then going from there.
Have there been moments where the pain felt too heavy, where you questioned whether you could keep going, and how did you push through?
My first, I want to say first and second year, those I think were the hardest years because I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of, oh, change your mission statement. People wanted me to change what I was doing. And it was tough. Like, it's interesting. My one of my really close friends, I think she saw how motivated I was to make it happen. And she was really big on being one of my first supporters. So it's like for me, I only need one thing or one sign to let me know that I can move forward. And I think that's what it was, like knowing as long as I take my one yes, I'm gonna hear a bunch of no's, but it's not gonna stop me.
What role has your faith, spirituality, and personal philosophy played in your ability to transform grief into action?
I mean, if I was not a woman of faith or a woman who had to let go and let God, I certainly would have remained in a dark place. When you think about a trauma that hits you like that, it's hard to get out of it, especially being sometimes like our world is not the nicest and kindest and it's really hard. So I think if it were not me being a praying woman, if my mother was not a praying woman, I don't know where I would be.
How old were you? I'm sorry. How
Yeah.
old were you when your father was taken away from you?
I was 19. Yes, I was 19, my sister was 20. So, yeah, it was some years ago.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's a traumatic experience, and it takes a long time, and I've had a stepfather who passed away, and it's like you never truly fully healed. There's always that hole there. I mean, but you just continue to go on. Looking back on everything you've accomplished since your father's passing, what do you think he would say about the work you're doing?
Sometimes I envision this. I'm like, I can wherever my dad is at right now, I can see him like loud and bragging because that's how he was in my graduation. Like, oh my God, look at my daughter. I graduated fourth in high school. So I can see him being loud and bragging and being proud and knowing that everything he taught me sunk in, like, yes, that I heard you. Like, I heard everything that you were saying. But I think on both fronts, like, knowing that I'm making them proud, but, like, knowing every day what I'm doing for the community, it's priceless.
Now you got to rep Philly a little bit. What junior high school and high school did you graduate from?
So, my parents actually and because of my father, he was in the Navy, they sent me away to a boarding school. I went to yeah, it was a military now, I did at least go to Hamilton where,
Okay.
Abbott Elementary is, so that's at least
Right.
fun. But,
Right.
yeah, in the 6th grade, my dad was in the Navy, so I went to this boarding school. It was the Children for Veterans, so it's called Scapa
Okay.
School for Veterans too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I spent time in the Marine Corps and the Navy myself. So, okay, how has this journey changed you as a person?
Oh my goodness, man. One, again, didn't want to run a nonprofit because I knew it was a lot of work. So it really tested my patience. It really grew me because I also am a very private person, but that has to be thrown out the window because unfortunately people want to know who you are and what you stand for. It has also made me, I think, my career makes me communicate a little bit more, but this is communicating on a different wavelength. And I think it's also about making people buy into your mission. That whole sales thing. Cause I'm normally a person like, I mean, you like you don't, But this is different because it's what it's tied to. So yeah, those three things. And that social media, man, that's a whole nother story.
Correct, correct. And that's something I'm navigating and learning and growing into. So, but yeah, social media is becoming big now. Social media is actually podcasts are actually replacing news. And so it's
Mm.
so it's a lot of people now are getting their information and their perspective from podcasts. Where do you see the foundation 5 or 10 years from now?
Man, I feel like I get this question a lot, and I think initially I talked about it going national, but I feel like in 5 or 10 years, I do want it to expand a little bit more regionally. Like if it's in Jersey and PA now, I would love it to be starting from Rhode Island all the way to Florida. I would love that.
Are there any other projects, books, or initiatives you're working on that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So the second edition is just newly released in May. So that's the thing that I'm try to make sure that people are aware of. I have associated planner. So it's the CDB Scholarship Monthly Planner. It's a K through 12 planner that has over 150 nationwide scholarships. And then I have the college edition of the planner that has over 200 nationwide scholarships.
Okay. Okay. We'll have all your links on all the promos and all your information. My and one of my team members will get with you and make sure we have all that information listed on the promos and
Thank
links to your
you.
pages and resources. What keeps you motivated on the hard days when the work feels overwhelming?
So sleep, because I have to have sleep because I can't function without it. Prayer. And I think thinking about my father, like what he would do in certain instances, he has always instilled in us just to never be a quitter. I've always been really resilient. And so I just look at it like, maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow might be a day when I can tackle it, but it's just about knowing and discerning, but not giving up.
Okay, we're going into that area of the show called flip mode where you get to
Mhm.
ask me 3 questions. So, what are the 3 questions you want to ask me?
Well, I definitely have to ask about what inspired you to start your nonprofit.
Profit started out of the whole I was locked up inside the house during COVID and I seen the whole George Floyd thing. So
Mhm.
that kind of erupted activism into me and social justice. But then on the other side, I seen the backlash that Black Lives Matter was
Mhm.
getting. So for me, I said, well, why don't I just do a social justice nonprofit where we just reach out to everyone?
And
And
how
so
did you go ahead, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, but so how did you decide on like your programs? Like I know social justice was you were inspired by, that movement, but what were your how did you choose your programs?
They just developed organically as I was moving through the process of, here in New York, you have to become a corporation. And then, after you become a corporation, you have to file for your 501c3. And so, I didn't do any of that by myself. I went the easy route. I hired a company called Swift Filings
I did
to
too.
do.
Oh my goodness. After I made a mistake and had a friend do that is so funny.
Yeah, because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to have myself in a process whereas I started putting a whole bunch of money into something, then they just slam the door on you
Yeah.
and kind of like tell you, well, okay, you know what? You messed this up. And you know what? We're throwing it into the trash can. I just have this fear that if I did it myself, that either it could be rejected or they could later look at it and review it and reject it. So,
Mm.
what I wanted to make sure is I want a professional organization handling all of this and then they're responsible for pushing this through and making sure that it meets all the standards necessary. Now, I had to stay on Swift Filings because they did a lot of things wrong in the process. But once again, they filed as a for profit first instead of a nonprofit
Yeah.
here in the state of New York. And then when they went to file for my C3. They didn't submit. I guess they have to submit like a photocopy of the actual payment, just not they have to actual do electronic payment, but submit a photocopy of it. It was just a mess. But I stayed on top of them, which stayed on top of the process. So I knew they were getting paid. So I knew they had to make it happen.
Right. 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 I
So
guess
I personally, I wouldn't advise anyone. I wouldn't advise anyone to try going through the filing, registering a nonprofit in your state and then doing that 501c3. It's easier for me to tell well, you didn't do this right. You need to correct this. So there are other companies like Swift Filings, but I was pretty happy with, how much it cost and what I got in the end.
and that's so funny you say that because I talk about that in the book, how I didn't do it myself, it was someone I knew, but I advised the same thing, like, that could have saved me so much time. That's so funny, oh my god, and then I guess my 3rd question I had
No, that was the first question, wasn't it?
was I thought it was, like, a 3-point question.
No, well, that was the
Smart.
first question. Well, give me another
Okay,
question and then we'll wrap it up.
okay. So, pros and cons of having a nonprofit.
Pros and cons. You can't do this for money. You can't do this for money. The resources are drying up, and you really, really have to be proactive. You really have to be proactive about looking for just causes that are going to motivate people and that are meaningful to you so that you can stick to it. Because there's some things that I started and it's there, but the timing was wrong.
Mhm.
And so I haven't dropped it, but I have to hold it in status till the time opens up. Like one of the biggest things we were getting ready to do was this Tents for Gaza thing. But I had
Mhm.
to put that on hold because this Israeli conflict they keep on bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing. So once again, once they get a real lasting ceasefire, then I have a lot of different resources, a lot of different people that are willing and ready to kick in to start
Mhm.
getting these large 50, 60, 70 individual CP tents, not these small little tents, but these tents that people can put heaters in the winters and ACs in the summer. So
Mhm.
as they're rebuilding there, it's really sustainable as far as living. Yeah, but and the cons, you just have to. Yeah, I don't know if there's so many cons, except it's just difficult work. It's difficult work, and you have to push and you have to inspire yourself.
Yeah, okay. So that was 2, so you said I get 1 more?
If you have one more,
Oh, I think I have one more. So you actually use the word sustainability, and I do feel like when I was applying to grants, I feel like that's the one thing they ask you, like, how are you going to be sustainable with this nonprofit if you don't get this grant or if you don't get funding? How do you feel, especially giving advice to me, because I don't know how long we've been doing this. How do you feel like nonprofits, especially African American, Black led nonprofits, can remain sustainable?
what I'm learning, the two biggest things I'm really coming to learn out right now is your board of directors.
Hmm.
So if you don't have people in corporations, in the city government, I mean, you have to have big time people on your board of directors.
Mhm.
And so you have to start lining some people up for your board of directors. And then just not get them to come on your board of directors. They have to bring some money with them. So,
Yeah.
okay, you're agreeing to be on my board of directors. Okay, do you have the ability to bring five to $10,000 worth of awards or $20,000 worth of awards or resources with you? So
Mhm.
getting people who believe on your board of directors who are actually willing to help you get the funding necessary to move your whole, your goals and your plans forward. That's really big. That's really big. And that's something that took me a long time to kind of figure out. The second thing, hire a part-time or full-time grant writer.
Mhm.
because that's probably the most tedious portion of that. And if you really don't know the system and how you need to really present it and how this thing needs to be projected based upon, their requirements and what they're asking, I mean, you run into a lot of brick walls. I'll submit it, and then a professional grant writer submit it for my company. Mine will get rejected. Theirs will get accepted for the same nonprofit
Right.
because they know what they're doing.
Right.
They know what they're doing. So I think a lot of times we as African Americans, we get into something, but we don't get all the necessary pieces that we need to in order to make it successful. The other thing is they don't like doing it, but you can get money from SBA for a nonprofit. You can get the $50,000 microloan. They will just only give it to you in certain niche areas. So once again, you have to deal with somebody who's used to, submitting, for funding for SBA loans. So you have to learn and know what's available and know the people and resources out there to do it. I think a lot of times we want to do things on our own, and that doesn't get us across the bridge. We just have the expertise and experience.
Okay, well said.
Okay. Closing this thing out, advice and call to action. If you could give one piece of advice to young African American students who are trying to navigate their educational journey, what would it be?
Do not give up. And if you have to pivot, pivot. And I
Okay.
say that because it's so easy with what we're influenced by and what we see that we think not valuing the importance of an education is something that we should give up. But if that means you have to pivot onto a different career choice, do that. But do not give up what most people prayed and wish they could have.
What message do you have for parents who've lost children to gun violence and are struggling to find their way forward?
Find out about support groups. There are always organizations, especially depending on which city you're in, that have advocates. Philly itself, they have something called Moms Bonded by Grief. Like there are a lot of groups and organizations that can help you. And of course, we know with church and whatever your religious organization is, mental health, like dealing with finding a therapist, like there are tools and resources available.
Okay, Khadijah, what do you want your legacy to be?
I always say that my legacy is about fighting for my jersey, my last name. Like it's really important that people not only remember my father, but my family, the impact that I want the community to know that despite what happened to him, we turned something tragic into something beautiful and we didn't allow it to keep us in the dark space. But I also just want people to know the same thing my father imparted in me. With hard work, you can do anything.
If listeners take away just one thing from our conversation today, what do you hope that would be?
I think I want people to, I hope, be inspired that I could be anywhere. Like I could be in the worst place or in the best, but I hope that my story and my journey inspires those to keep going, inspires those to, again, be able to take that pain and turn it into something and, make the choice to do something for yourself and for your community.
Okay. Where can people find your book and learn more about the CDB Scholarship Foundations and all of these other scholarship resources you have?
Okay, so the book can be found on my website, www.craigdbutlerscholarship.com. It can also be found on Amazon as well as Barnes and Noble, pretty much where all books are sold. Resources, there are a ton of resources and links inside of the book about how to start a nonprofit. And I can be found on social media where I give out little tidbits and jewels at CDB Scholarship.
Okay, Khadijah Butler, thank you so much for sharing your story, your heart, and your powerful message with us today. Your commitment to turning pain into power and creating opportunities for the next generation is truly inspiring. To our listeners, if you've been moved by Khadijah's story, I encourage you to check out Laying the Foundation Brick by Brick Second Edition and learn more about the CDB Scholarship Foundation. Consider supporting their mission or finding ways to advocate for educational equality and against gun violence in your own community. Remember, change starts with conversation, and conversation starts with us. Thank you for turning to the All About Us podcast. I'm Carl Allen, and until the next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep lifting each other up.
So good.
Mhm.